Okay, so I want to make a video appreciating Jaylen Brown, what he did for the Celtics. This trade hurt, right? I'm a big Celtics fan. I wanted Jaylen Brown to stay on the team, obviously. The wildest thing about the Celtics over the last few years is that people somehow convinced themselves Jaylen Brown was replaceable when the team kept proving the exact opposite every season. Everybody wanted to talk about the stars, the coaching, the spacing, the analytics, and all the fancy basketball words people learned from one podcast episode. Meanwhile, Brown was out there doing the dirty work that never fits neatly into any graphic. He took the hard defense assignments, attacked the rim when the offense got stuck, and absorbed pressure that would have crushed a lot of players. The funny part is, people only notice that stuff after it's gone. That's usually how basketball works, nigga. When people discuss Boston, the conversation almost always starts with Jason Tatum, because that's the franchise cornerstone, and nobody is arguing against that. But what made the Celtics dangerous was never one guy carrying everything by himself. The entire machine worked because Brown gave himself another elite scorer who could create offense without needing somebody to hold his hand. There were nights where Tatum struggled and Brown looked like the best player on the floor. There were stretches where defenses loaded up on one star and the other star punished them and won them the game. That balance is a luxury most teams spend years trying to find. Brown's scoring numbers tell part of the story, but the bigger story is how he scored those points. He wasn't living off easy cuts and wide open looks generated by everybody else. A lot of his buckets came from difficult drives, tough mid-range jumpers, and physical finishes through contact. That stuff matters when playoff defenses start treating every possession like a federal investigation. During the regular season, talent can carry you through problems. In the playoffs, sometimes you just need a dude who can look at a defense and say, I don't care what y'all are doing, I'm getting this bucket. One thing that gets overlooked is how much Brown improved compared to the player he was entering the league. This wasn't some finished superstar who showed up polished and ready for greatness. The Celtics drafted an athlete with potential and watched himself turn into an all-star. Through years of hard work, his handle improved, his shot improved, his decision-making improved, and his confidence grew every season. That's one reason Boston fans connected with him so much. They watched the growth happen in real time instead of reading about it afterward. The playoff run that ended with a championship changed how a lot of people viewed Brown. Before that run, critics constantly searched for flaws in his game. They talked about turnovers, ball handling issues, and moments where he looked uncomfortable under pressure. Then the postseason arrived, and Brown responded by playing some of the best basketball of his career. Suddenly, the same people acting like the detectives on a crime scene got real quiet. Funny how winning works. What made Brown valuable wasn't just the scoring either. His physicality gave Boston a different dimension than most perimeter stars provide. At his size, he could switch across multiple positions and survive against different matchups. That flexibility allowed the Celtics to maintain defensive intensity without constantly changing their identity. Analytics people love lineup versatility because it increases your margin for error. Even if you don't care about spreadsheets, you can still see the impact with your own eyes. The Celtics become one of the league's best teams because they had answers for different situations. Need shooting? They had shooting. Need defense? They had defense. Need isolation scoring in late games? Brown could provide that when necessary. Need somebody willing to attack the paint when everybody else wanted to settle for jumpers? Brown was usually volunteering for that job. Championship teams are built on solutions, not just talent. A lot of fans focus on highlights because that's the fun part of basketball, right? The poster dunks get millions of views, while the smart rotations barely get noticed. Brown contributed plenty of highlight moments, trust me. But his value often showed up in the less glamorous possession. The extra effort sprinting back on defense, the physical drive that created free throws, or the willingness to guard a dangerous scorer. These plays don't always trend online. They still help win games. The Celtics also benefited from Brown's durability compared to some stars around the league. Availability is one of the most underrated skills in professional sports. A player can't help you from the injury report. no matter how talented he is. Boston constantly had Brown available for meaningful stretches of the season. That stability matters when teams are trying to build chemistry and establish roles. There were definitely flaws in his game because every player has them. Sometimes the handle could get loose in traffic. Sometimes the decision making wasn't perfect when defenses crowded him. Sometimes he forced difficult shots that made fans stare at their television like somebody just unplugged the Wi-Fi. But the important thing is that the positives constantly outweighed the negatives. That's the calculation every contender makes. From a salary cap perspective, Brown represented both a challenge and an advantage. Paying star players enormous money limits flexibility, but that's the cost of competing at the highest level. Teams don't win championships by collecting financial saving accounts. They win by collecting elite talent and figuring out the bill later. Boston committed to Brown because replacing that level of production is incredibly difficult. That's not a guess, that's reality. Another thing people forget is how much pressure comes with playing in Boston. Every cold shooting night becomes a public trial. Every mistake gets replayed and analyzed by thousands of people who suddenly think they're assistant coaches. Brown dealt with years of scrutiny while continuing to improve. Some players shrank under that environment. He didn't. The relationship between Brown and Tatum was also more important than people realized. Two stars sharing a team isn't always smooth in the NBA. History is filled with talented duos that eventually exploded like somebody left fireworks in a microwave. Brown and Tatum spent years learning how to coexist, sacrifice, and adapt. That process takes patience from both players. Not every partnership survives long enough to reach a championship. When Boston was rolling through opponents, Brown's athleticism often felt unfair. One possession, he's drilling a three. The next possession, he's flying to the rim like gravity owes him money. Then he's back on defense, making life miserable for everybody else. That two-way impact is why coaches love players like him. They affect multiple parts of the game at all times. The scary thing for opponents wasn't necessarily Brown's peak games. It was the fact that Boston didn't need him to score 40 points to feel his impact. He could still have a relatively quiet scoring night and still contribute through defense, rebounding, and secondary playmaking. That's the difference between a good scorer and a complete player. Numbers tell part of the story. The game tells the rest. Looking at the bigger picture, no little baby, Brown helped define a Celtics era that constantly competed for championships. Plenty of teams spent years chasing relevance. Boston spent years chasing banners. Brown was a major reason why expectations remain so high every season. Success changes the standards people use to judge you. Suddenly conference finals appearances start feeling disappointing. The humor in all of this is that fans always think replacing a star will be easy. Somebody starts talking about draft picks, future flexibility, and exciting young prospects. Then the season begins and everybody realizes those prospects aren't actually Jaylen Brown. That's when reality punches the conversation in the face. Proven production is expensive because proven production is rare. The NBA teaches that lesson every year. If Brown were removed from those Celtics teams, the ripple effects would be massive, trust me. Defensive assignments change. Offensive responsibilities increase for everyone else. Rotations get reshuffled and weaknesses become easier to attack. Basketball isn't just about subtracting points from a box score. It's about removing an entire layer of what made a team function. That's why evaluating players requires more than scrolling through stats for 30 seconds. Brown's value came from context. He could score 25 on a random Tuesday in January, but he could also survive the pressure cooker of playoff basketball. Not every talented player can do both. The postseason has exposed a lot of reputations over the years. Brown strengthened his. The narrative around him changed because he forced it to change. People questioned whether he could be a championship level second option. Then he helped win a championship. People questioned whether he could handle pressure. Then he delivered under pressure. Eventually the criticism starts running out of gas. At some point, the evidence becomes overwhelming. Now, if you're imagining a future where Brown isn't wearing green anymore, that's where things get interesting. Celtics fans would immediately notice the absence of his physicality, scoring, and versatility. Opponents would notice too because game plans become easier when one elite player disappears. That's not disrespect towards the remaining roster. That's just acknowledging how much talent Brown brings to the table. And Brown in Philadelphia, it sent Celtics fans insane. I can't even lie to y'all. Celtics fans, they all reacted like somebody stole their car and parked it across the street just to be disrespectful. Philly fans, they're convincing themselves they discovered basketball for the first time. The rivalry, it's gonna be more chaotic than it ever was. At the end of the day, the simplest explanation is usually the correct one. Jaylen Brown helped the Celtics become one of the NBA's premier organizations because he consistently impacted winning at a high level. He wasn't perfect, no. He wasn't flawless. And he definitely had weaknesses like every star player in the league. But championships are won by great players, not perfect ones. Brown proved his value year after year, and that's why his absence is felt so heavily. But that's the video, y'all. Let me know if y'all enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and until later, I'll see you on Mars. Peace.
You telling me you falling out of love with me. Hope you can find someone to love you better than I did. Taking our memories on love and treating it like nothing. Taking our memories on love and treating it like gossip. It's my love for my grandmother make me gentle when I care for you. Tell me you're falling out of love, she's breaking my heart in two.